The Underground, Ideas into Action presents an Underground Chat, where we bring the underground conversation to you. Today's chat, Mindfulness and Empathy, with Chad Helminak, Director of DE and Cooperative Culture at the National Credit Union Foundation.
Welcome, Chad, to our Underground Chat this afternoon, and we're excited to have you. So how is your family doing and your greater credit union family at this point?
Thanks for having me, Sue, and thanks for asking. My family, we're blessed. I think we both share that word. I'm lucky to be employed. My family stayed healthy. We go a little crazy with the Groundhog Day thing every day. Time is this weird thing of standing still and moving very quickly over the past few months. So, but I'm lucky. And the team around me, our team at the foundation, if I could pick a word, it's perseverance. It's staying true to what we, always have been doing, serving credit unions and just finding new ways to do it. So making it through, I think, just, one day at a time, like so many other people are right now. How about you? Is it okay if I ask you that questions too?
Of course. Okay. I mean, that's what this is conversation.
Good.
We all were in DC and pumped and excited about everything that was going on and the momentum of the credit union space and the impact we were having, right? And then, as you know, we travel all the time, so everybody kind of went in different directions. And so we had an opportunity at that point to, those of us that were in the US, we were still traveling, but we literally started hearing the warnings and knowing that we needed to start to figure out what we were going to do from a business standpoint. Because I think what's happened is we're all disoriented for the first, couple weeks. Like, what does this mean? Everybody is concerned about their families, and certainly for me, the biggest thing with the continuation of what's taking place is the idea of isolation. Mm-hmm. Getting sick or being in a vulnerable position is something that we can't control, right? But the idea of then being in isolation on top of that is something that I find, just heartbreaking. From a business standpoint, our world shifted, and we immediately started, because we started our company as a multimedia educational firm. Mm-hmm. And so we've been capturing video and doing brain-based learning for 25 years. So for me, the virtual shift has not been that significant. It's just, I think, the learning with everyone of what platforms and what we're going to use. So our business itself has increased. And I'm finding conversations like this, these chats are more personal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and one of the more fascinating topics of conversation I've had with folks recently is, what are we gonna keep from this time? What are we learning now that we're gonna carry forward? And what are we not going to put up with anymore? What are we going to cast aside and say, it's crazy that we used to do that? And so not, maybe it's finding a silver lining to what's happening, but I think it does give us time to reflect on how things change for the better, and what we can make sure, we just don't get back into whatever we were doing before, but consciously make that choice,
I think that's right, and priorities have shifted. And you mentioned that about what will we get back into and what won't. I think this virtual environment has allowed people maybe too much time at home, but on the other hand, the fact is that commuting in a car for an hour every day or 2 hours a day, based on where you are, some of those things that took away from our ability to think and be with our families.
Yeah, and the ability for virtual to provide opportunities for inclusion. For example, and I think we'll talk about our programming a little bit, and maybe you find this with yours too, but there are people who, our DE program runs 5 days, the in-person one, 5 days a week, 1 week, 5 days in Madison. And that's simply just unobtainable for people, whether it's travel restrictions, they've got family commitments. it's impossible. So why should they be shortchanged of an experience to learn about things like DE? So I think that inclusion element is going to be really cool to see more opportunities to engage people like that.
Well, I want to talk about DE in just a second, because I know
Sure,
that'll
yeah.
make all of our hearts pound. But one thing you've just said is an interesting area for us to explore a little bit. I think inclusion and the ability to have access. I mean, we have access, as you know, all our entire industry and, frankly, business world, to so many thought leaders right now. And so many meetings and free access and so on. So I think that's unprecedented. Then I also want to talk to you about financial education,
Yeah.
and the fact that we don't necessarily have everyone included, even though we have the opportunity to have it. So let's start though. Let's get into the DE
Sure.
program. So, okay, the first thing that I have to say to everyone is that this is the man, this is the guy that is really driving this sense of belonging, sense of empathy. I know all of you love the DE program and love the idea of being a credit union development educator. But let me just say, okay, your impact has been significant. My colleagues have all told me that theirs is the best class. Brandy Stankovic, 2003. Mike Stankovic, 2001. And now Zach is already boasting that his will be 2020 because he signed up. So tell us about the DE program. Tell us why it's special. Give us some ideas.
Well, first off, they're all right. They were all the best class ever. And mine was in 2009 when I went through. What makes it special is its focus on humanity, on our why and the purpose of why we do business as credit unions and why we work in credit unions. The secret, and I think the program has, over the course of time, had this air of secrecy around it. What happens at DE, stays at DE kind of thing. And, there's a method to that madness, that it's about just immersing people in new learning and not letting them prepare too much. And that's kind of been part of the secret sauce. The real secret sauce isn't me. It isn't, it's in the lessons, but more importantly, putting people together in person. In that case, it's putting 48 people from around the country and the world in one room for 5 days and letting their talents shine and their voices be heard. And that's the real secret to DE. That has held true since day one. And it's the program content's changed over time. Over the past 2 years, we've added, for example, expanded lessons on empathy and diversity, equity, inclusion. And bringing in system partners who can help us to tell that story too, because again, it's not about what I can do at the front of the room, it's what voices can we bring in to have this great conversation. So I could, as you can probably already sense, I could go on and on about it, but it's about people and how there are so many good programs in the system that deal with the whys and the hows of what happens in credit unions. We can't do without them, and they're fantastic, but ours is unique in that we put that aside for a moment and say, what's happening in the lives of members? What's happening in the lives of our employees? What are the problems they're facing, and what can we do about them as credit unions?
Yeah, and it's a very special, if you will, part of the credit union message, and that is the people are special and the people care. And I don't know about you, but when we have the opportunity to engage in projects and be part of the boots in the ground kind of initiative, and I know that's what you guys do, you've also added an international component, haven't you? You have the international cuties now. Tell me about that.
Sure. So over the course of time, when the DE program started back in 1982, it was it was focused on global development issues, but it was at the time a U.S. participants. And over time, as international people have come through, there's been this really rich grassroots movement where people say they come through from a different country and say, I want to bring DE back to our country. So it's created this global network of several DE programs that exist. And So we've got around 2,000 people who have graduated from the USDE program, and you can more than double that internationally. So really successful, and again, grassroots. That's been a lot of people taking the initiative to grow that program on their own, but it's a beautiful kind of really neat part of our program.
I love it. I think that when people own an initiative, when it's really about them, it's so exciting to see people step up and say, hey, I want to do that, and they become powerhouses in their own world. And you and I've talked in the past, and I know you're working with World Council a little bit, but the connection that we're making through the sister societies around the world and the DE program, I think that's going to even strengthen our partnerships and our alliances and how we all work together, because there's definitely that shared passion.
Oh my gosh. And Sue, I know that you can relate to this. There are two other big standout pieces of DE that just, I think, hold true with the development work that I know you've been a part of and that I've seen time and time again through World Council. But this idea of empowerment, empowering others, and along with that action, that it's not just good enough to come learn about the cooperative principles. It's how do you use that to the betterment of the people we're serving? And that's the real, when DE programs spring up in other countries, or people go back to their credit union and create new programs to help people, it's, that's all them, and helping them to realize that they can create that change. It doesn't, we like to talk about how it's not about changing the world. It's changing, one person at a time, the people around you, what's your impact, right? So I know you can relate to that, but it's about that actionable, right? Creating change.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you can own that thought process, because each of us has to be accountable for what it is we want out of the world, right? And so the concept of us taking hold of something and saying, I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to make this happen. And then once I start showing people I can make it happen, then I'm going to garner strategic influence. I'm going to get people to come with me on this journey. And as they come with me and they're committed, then we're going to really see change. So I know that you just mentioned something that's very dear to my heart, and that's measurable impact, metrics, and I know you guys have done that too. Let's start thinking big. Okay, you also have you mentioned DEI initiatives, and you mentioned the fact that you're looking at continuing to expand the program. I love the fact that you're engaged in young people. I love the fact that you're also engaging those of us that have been in the industry for a while, and kind of melding together those thoughts. But I was thinking about the fact that you've also started to have your messaging be around, and not start, but probably more emphasis on inclusion, equity. Really looking at how you want to mentor, how you want to have empathy in the way you message. And given this time in our world, I think that that's so very critical. And I know you've done a series of education on that. So I was looking at the financial health. I was looking at mental health. I was looking at physical health. And that's something that from an underground standpoint, we get people to talk about. And I think that you're doing a series of education around that as well. So tell me about that.
It expands from our DE program. There's an alignment there, but it's how can we think of credit unions beyond traditional financial services? How can we get out of that rut of, here's our products. Why aren't people coming to us, right? It's so at DE, we talk about the development issues of hunger and housing. And I know that you talk about Maslow's hierarchy as part of the underground and the work you do. And it's essential for us to think like that because our members are thinking like that. So a lot of our work around financial health and well-being is really about creating that safety in a more holistic perspective and helping credit unions to see if there is value and opportunity there that we may not see. And the connection we like to make is, I promise not to go on a whole history geek out here with the timeline and everything, but when we go back to credit unions starting in Germany in 1850, the first credit unions were built out of famine and hardship by farmers. So they're looking to solve hunger through the credit union model. And of course, access to credit and savings was part of that too. But how there's these issues that are seemingly beyond our wheelhouse that are absolutely essential for us paying attention to if we want to be relevant in the future marketplace. So I think financial well-being and our work in that area is not only the realization of that and helping credit unions to think that way, but also in celebrating the stuff that credit unions are already doing. There's so many challenges ahead that we face together and we can work on, but also there's so many success stories in the credit unions that are out there and lessons that we can learn from each other. So I think part of it is understanding what life is really like in the lives of our members. And the second part of that is how can we work together to solve these? Because at the end of the day, that's our superpower, right? Leveraging our cooperative system.
I agree. We one of the first educational modules that I mentioned earlier was the idea of credit union philosophy. And so back in the days of CDs, we actually created CDs and made them available to everyone. And I was involved in one of the original books about credit union philosophy. And when we were writing that and researching that, all of the things that you mentioned came up. But Shapiro's role at the U.S., as you know, at the U.S. Commerce Office was really key as well. And when I think about where we are today with it, one of the challenges that we posed to an underground audience was the idea of how do we intersect the social justice, social issues. In our particular case, the time we brought it up was after the murders in Las Vegas. So this was several years ago, but such a powerful time for us as a credit union movement to come together and to support. And sometimes those jumps are not easy. So I'm going to go back to your point about taking action. We have, as part of the underground, what we call Ideas into Action. And you know, it's actually the name of my newsletter when we first started our company. So, you know, some of the stuff is like still relevant today. But people don't always make the connection. They don't always know, hey, this is great to talk about, but how do I take it back? And what I like about the purposefulness of and the mindfulness that you're doing with what your education and how you're tying this back together, that helps people implement. And right now, the common bond, the social purpose of why we came together, to me, is the key factor. We can be transactions, and the more we go virtual, the compelling discussion going forward is going to be how do we continue to connect our social purpose in a virtual way. And I'm sitting here having a conversation with Chad, and I don't think we've had this kind of quality time together at any of our conferences. So this intimacy, you know, I know it's virtual, but maybe that's an example of it. What do you see in the future when it comes to that social mission and connection?
Well, I was going to ask you a question along those lines. I'll go first, but I'd love to hear your thoughts too, because I feel like I have so much to learn from you and the work that you've done. I think it's this idea of differentiation that we talk about in the marketplace, and treating members with empathy. And you know, I think there's a lot of things that are in our toolbox already that lend itself well to this transition of if we're talking about, you know, integrating our social mission with our business mission. I think the first step in doing this is a self-awareness, and that's some of the things that we're working on, and that may seem oversimplified, but I think one thing I see, Sue, and I'd love your take on this as well, is I think credit unions, there's so much value in starting within our own walls. We often look to solve the problems of the world outside of our walls when we see so many credit union employees facing the same hardships and challenges that members face. And then we expect them to go out and do the things that they need to lift up members when we're maybe not spending as much time lifting up our own. Do you see that too?
I find that such a vulnerable subject. I am so grateful that you brought that up. People are, in our research and our discussions, we look at what I call the pillars, our values, right? And we always have employees and the members in the community somewhere in all of that. Well, when we talk about employees, we're talking about people that are family members, they're community members, they're engaged in so many ways, and they have sometimes a village around them. And that village includes people that could be sick, people that could be laid off, people that are being impacted. And I'll give you an example. The answer to your specific question is absolutely yes. And we have to figure out a way to let people be vulnerable with us about those subjects. And I think that that's going to be one of the key discussion points that we should have as we build our cultures. But I'll give you an example, and it's fresh in my mind because I was at a board session this week and I was presenting, and we did an exercise ahead of time where you and I were partners. So I called you ahead of time and said, how are you doing? And then you asked me how I was doing, and then we reported it to the board. And it included about 30 people. And during the course of those reports, and everybody, it was real fast, but in the course of those reports, I heard a Latino family where everyone had been sick and they just lost their mother-in-law. I heard people where their partners are out of work. I heard people that they're suffering with their children because they can't go back to school. I heard so many dynamics that when it got to me, my partner said, Sue is the eternal optimist and she's pushing for progress and she's all of these things. And then when it came to me to talk about my partner, I said very, nice things. But I started it with the thought that I'm so humble because no, I'm not always positive. And no, I mean, I'd love to bound from my bed, but the reality is that I do. And then I think, the world's changed. I'm not traveling. I'm not doing these things. But then we go back to what you said is gratitude. But I think when the greatest lesson for all of us, and it came from my perspective of all of my research over, the last 20 years about Maslow's hierarchy, is the idea that in a very short period of time, we all went to the same place of safety and physiological needs. So when you're all in a place of worrying about those things, you all become vulnerable together. And at first, frankly, we became vulnerable together and we were willing to open up about that, right? We had, view from my window with millions of people online taking pictures of where they were. We're stronger together. We had our help of the first line employees and our frontline employees. And all of that kicked in and it made humanity respond. What I worry about today is that as this continues, as we know it will, we're going to see the realities of this time in history. We're going to see the ramifications and the ripple effect throughout communities, throughout families. And it's a time for us not to let that be an empty space. And I believe we have to push for progress, but from a new place, a new place of vulnerability. Does that make sense? It's kind of a long answer, but it's so passionate for me because I find, tellers know more and frontline people know more about you and I, okay, than we often tell our best friend because they know what our bank balances are, they know all of that. But who's helping them, So
I love it too. And it leads into something we're exploring now for future content is how do you cultivate not just self-awareness, which I mentioned, but self-respect. That's one area of, I see credit union people giving. That is the common theme you see from the people who are just living that credit union mission. and right now doing it more than ever. There are a lot of people who work in credit unions whose their gas tank's on E, and to spend time on yourself, treating yourself, and not feeling selfish about that, identifying with yourself too, and here are the things I am and the things I'll do. I think, admittedly, Sue, I was one of those people who kind of went through life for a long time. I just never had an opportunity to kind of take a look and write down my values or have those assessments that really helped me to, I had a gut feeling about who I was and what I wanted, but I never coalesced around it. I never put it down on paper until much later in life. And then how helpful that was. That's one of those things that I feel like in school, along with financial education and like changing like the tire in your car and things, like why don't they teach that kind of stuff, right? Like to not just cement your values in place, but say, here's how you reflect on how you're living your values. And that element of self-respect too, I think ties in there somewhere. But I think spending time on our employees, it's not just a area where you can't lose. I think it's such a fantastic investment, because they're the ones who execute on the work we're all trying to do alongside us, right? But thinking about what credit unions would be like, and maybe this is a big idea that others have discussed, but kind of what if we made, like, you think of these employers, one that comes to mind, and maybe it's an older example, but I think still true. You always hear about how Costco took care of their employees, right? Pay them fair wage, treat them with respect, and have policies that lead them to happy lives. If we were able to implement that on a widespread basis and associate credit union employment with happiness, and we're going to take care of you, I think some credit unions do a phenomenal job about that. But if we were to actually call that out and have some kind of movement around that, the results in our work, I think, would be well apparent. I just have a inkling. I mean, it makes, maybe, you take care of people and they'll do a great job. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it not only makes sense, I think that it's potentially the future wave of what it's going to take to bring people together. I know that we can do happy hours. I know we can do all of these things, but the reality is it's the commonality of who we are and our own self-awareness, self-belief that bring people together and bond them together. I was thinking of a couple thoughts as you were going through that. One was, it has to start, as you indicated, with self-awareness, but it's also a self-audit,
Yes.
All right? I challenge board members when we do strategic planning. I will specifically say to them, how many of your employees are homeless? What? Well, how many, right? How many of your employees are have an overdraft issue today? How many are using payday lenders?
Yeah.
And the boards all react to me like, of course that's not. And then because of our relationships and so on, then it's like, whoa. And then they'll turn to the executive team and they'll say, is this a problem? And I said, the fact that you're having to ask is important. And we need to be more, again, I use the term vulnerable, but we need to be willing to have conversations that are tough conversations and not feel like we're being put on the spot. So, in those scenarios, as you know, you're challenging your board, and I do the same thing with diversity. Really? Where are we really? Where is our baseline really? Let's ask those questions. And why are we afraid to participate in NCUF's diversity survey, right? Let's ask those tough questions. And the other thing that I wanted to say to people, based upon what you said, is that I have a strong belief that if you shine your light, all right, then you have an opportunity for the universe to open up and to be around you. And so I encourage you, and I encourage the people that are part of our underground and the people in credit union movement to shine their light and the stories that they're telling. Let's make a common voice available. And I think the foundation does that. And I had, the thought with you about the social, we have a lot of social media, we have a lot of groups, and I think that you're seeing an empathetic approach to communications right now that really taps into, and you guys are a trailblazer in bringing that to the forefront.
Well, I'd shoot that right back at you. And you mentioned voice, and how important it is for people right now to be heard. And this translates to, I think, fundamentally how we manage technology right now. This is an example. At the start of all the sessions that we've been doing virtually, we've been doing this mindfulness check-in, because I think there's this association with technology that we all do this, right? It's you put something on Netflix and then you start playing on your phone, right? Or like you're doing like the multitasking of technology. But in a conversation like this with you, for example, or any program that we'd run, it's about being present and practicing mindfulness to eliminate as many distractions as you can. And I say that as I've got like cicadas out the window, and I don't know if you can hear that or not. I'm sorry if the buzzing's annoying, but to try to eliminate the distractions and really focus on hearing the other person. And I think you've done such a fantastic job through the Underground in giving a forum for people to be heard, and how important that is now, with given our circumstances, but also with our fight for social justice and creating inclusive environments. There's an expectation that not only will credit unions need to hear the voices of their members and their employees and their communities, but also do something about it. There's, again, back to that actionable element. It's not just good enough to have a town hall or have a workshop and say, all right, that's, duly noted. You feel that way, fantastic. And the really great credit unions and organizations are truly listening and affirming what they heard, and then acting on those insights and things they learned. So I think, you alluded to this, the board, making these assumptions. And I think we just have to avoid doing that now, especially as we move forward with, whether it's in our actions or the things we just think are true. We've got to validate those things, right?
100%. And we have to help people with the connection between their emotions and what they're feeling, and help them translate that into how do you take the next step. When you talk about making ideas actionable, not everyone's natural at that. So emotional intelligence, you've talked about that. We focus on that. I think that that's a common theme. But when I'm defining what leadership is going to look like in the future, emotional intelligence is right there, technology ability, connections, and then helping people take and do something with what we've talked about. So in other words, we're gonna talk about this vulnerable stuff, and then after I've asked those questions, I'm going to say, well, everybody write that down, and when we get together next month, let's have an audit of that. All right. And it's embarrassing. It's uncomfortable. It may even be very difficult for your people to share. But if you create an environment of care, I worked with the credit union of taking care and making that the central theme. It's just the whole idea that it's okay for you to tell me how you feel. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to have my own lens. So I'm going to try to just listen. But I do think that the messages are clear. The one, we talk about million member followings and stuff, but one of the things that I wanted to just talk about before we wrap up, and so it's off script, so I'm just going to, ask you.
Please.
I don't think anybody owns thought leadership. In other words, there's been areas of our footprint, okay, in so many different aspects of what we've done, but we've also walked on the, climbed on the shoulders of the giants within the industry and within humanity to learn from them and to grow from them and to take a thought and build on it. I am so excited about the collaboration that's taking place right now. We saw last week with the Discovery Conference, we saw all 5 of the associations, the large associations together, talking together about common purpose. Are you heartened by what you're seeing with that collaboration as well?
I'm heartened, and I will hopefully continue to be heartened as it continues. I think you never want it to be, it's good that it's happening, but I hope it's not a sign of the times and then it's going to be bad. That's one of those things where we hope that remains true moving forward. And this has happened, I think, probably in every industry for as long as industries have existed, but this idea of who owns what, and what what lanes are we running, and how we part. There's so much. There's such a bigger mission, and right now, I think so many of us as system partners are looking at how can we help credit unions. And I love it because there's more conversations, I think, taking place in our industry that I've seen and been a part of. How can we work together to do more than we could alone? And I hope that stays true moving forward. I don't know what you're seeing. I hope you're seeing the same thing. And I know that we're big fans of collaboration, you and I. So what are you seeing though?
Well, I think that, over time, what you see is what I call event-driven collaboration, which we have events that take place, and there's no way that people can walk away. In other words, the commitment to change and working with the African American Credit Union Coalition, there's no way that as an industry, unless you're completely blind or, even with humanity, that we can walk away. So that's an event, if you will, even though it's been systemic and it's been there for a long time, it's something that was event driven. Now the question's going to be, do we proceed? How do we keep that going? And so what I'm seeing is there's a collaboration, but I think it's going to take mindfulness on your part, my part, for us to not let inclusion become exclusive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, you know that we're working, excuse me, one of the supporters and helping with CU Pride. I want to hear the voices of vulnerable people. And I'd like to have those voices represented throughout the industry, throughout the world. And with my number of years and quote unquote engagement within the industry, there's been different times that I've recognized vulnerability. And so I've stepped in and done my best to be part of that. And I think that's our challenge. Our challenge is to have it not be about me and my membership, okay, or the underground threatens because we may talk about things. No, it's about, we can talk about things that maybe you can't, okay? And if we, and I don't mean you personally, but I mean the industry can't in a standardized environment. And so let's use that as an ability to have an additional voice. And then from that, let's find actionable ideas into action that we could all implement. So I that's my way of saying, I think in a capsule, that we, all of us, make everything better. And if we don't have the ego associated with, I own that thought, or I own, this membership, then we'll change humanity, not just credit unions.
And I think seeing people like you put that into practice and not just talk about it, but I've seen you time and time again with your programming and the way you work, so often from afar, but you embody that cooperativeness, and I think it inspires others to do that too. And there are times where probably you and others, see that you practice that and it's not reciprocated, and that must be frustrating. At the same time, I think credit unions and the people who are pushing the movement forward in the spirit that we need to, and I'm talking about putting members first and remembering our mission, staying true to our philosophy, they see beyond that kind of thing and realize that there are people who are collaborating for the betterment of credit unions and betterment of them. So I'd like to think, and maybe I'm too optimistic about that, but I think that at some point people see through the ego, gas, and really what you do, that in that cooperative spirit, that will stand the test of time. Whereas the other things, it's built on a foundation of ego, essentially, or whatever the case is. You don't want to, I think those things won't last, just like, cooperativism will.
Yeah, and I just want to say that it's like the bell curve, right? It's the idea that when we're going up the mountain, and everybody's saying, there's not a problem, there's not a problem, there's not a problem. And then when we hit this point, we go, oh, there's a problem, oh, there's a problem. Oh, wow, we've always been on board with that. And that's what I look forward to, is let's push that rock together and we'll be there to push it up the mountain, push it up the mountain. And then when we get to the top, people will claim it and they'll run with it and it'll be theirs and we will have accomplished what we want. And so I love this industry. I love all facets of it. I think our business suppliers, our business partners are critical to what happens. And I think our thought leadership should go, all the way around. I think the foundation's role in making things happen, I loved, and I wrote an email to Gigi. I'm excited about your new mobile app and preparedness and the work that you're doing with PSCU. I'm thrilled with that. And so I know that we've got a time constraint here, but would you tell me briefly about that and then give us 2 action items?
Sure. You want to hear about the app?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. So the app is meant to connect credit unions that have resources with credit unions who need resources in a time of need. We've had this traditional role in helping with CU Aid to leverage our cooperative power and put together resources for credit union employees. So this is a way to step forward, and I think the app will continue to evolve as credit unions use it over time in the ways that they need it to. But for now, it's getting credit unions to think about what's in our kitchen cabinet that we could, in a time of need, offer to other credit unions. So I think the goal with that is some of that has been on a smaller scale, and we're trying to think about this bigger network of credit unions and how we can leverage that. So PSCU has been a huge help and partner in us in that work. So we're looking forward to seeing that grow. And unfortunately, disasters aren't going to slow down. And despite the pandemic, we see that still.
So the application to connect people, to support each other with the toolkit is on your website, and we'll make sure that we put that into our credits. And I want to say this, and then we'll go to your ideas in action. So are you going to evolve that into matching credit union people with each other? We could have a credit union match program where, love and belonging, and we share. Okay, we'll go down the road with that.
Well, it has been nicknamed, I think I've heard it called like the Tinder app for disaster relief credit. So who knows what the future of that holds here. That's another wing of the business. So I'll let them
I'll tell you what, maybe we'll go underground with that concept.
There we go.
You've talked about the need for collaboration. You've talked about getting involved with, DEs and understanding the core philosophy. You've talked about sustainable initiatives that go beyond the pandemic. That's probably for me, some of the ideas into action that you've affirmed is the whole idea that this is not just about this situation. I mean, this is a tough one, but empathy and some of the things that you guys have brought forward need to continue. So,
yeah, and thank you. One idea I'd push forward is this idea of self-respect and mindfulness. We've been working with BECU a bit and working with their employees about how empathy and happiness and mindfulness connects to the values that we have, that we keep on our walls and in the boardroom. What do these things mean to us? So I think the I don't know if there's like people are predisposed to thinking of soft skills as something like that's nice to have, when we can, but at times like this, it might be an all hands on deck. We focus on the priorities. Those kinds of things, those soft skills those should be at the forefront. So we're talking about mindfulness and empathy and self-awareness and respect. Those things have to continue. It's not, and I hope through our work, and I know that the work that you're doing too and others, that we can continue to make that accessible for credit unions. I think the other thing too, ideas in action, and this is more of something that it could have been a topic of conversation, but evaluating the power structures that exist within our organizations, what those look like in the future, and how do they serve everything we talked about creating an inclusive environment. And I'm not just talking about, making sure that our board is inclusive. That is important. But also, what do the structures itself look like? I know that we've got some limitations there in some cases, but at the same time, are those real limitations, or can we I see so much potential in the cooperative model and our ability to leverage that. I think sometimes we see this, and I think this is a common thread through some of the things we talked about. People envision things as a pie, that there's a finite amount of pie that can go around. And this idea that we need to get rid of that pie, that we don't just have a pie, we have a bakery, and we can make bigger pies, or we can make more pies. And maybe I'm just hungry right now, but I'm thinking about pies. But this idea that we exist in a time of limited resources, we have abundance thanks to our system and our partners and the partnerships that are there. So at the risk of sounding too rosy colored glasses, I think this idea of really evaluating how we structure our power within our organizations, and I'm talking about how decisions are made, the authority, things that you're, I'm sure, very familiar with. You've worked with credit unions over the years, but I think there's a real good thread there to pull.
I love that. And I want to make one comment on it as we wrap up here. But when we look at power, it starts in a credit union with the board. And it goes to the C-suite and then so on. I believe a few things. I believe, first of all, that we need to take action right away on DEI. So that does not mean that we replace people and we will see immediate change, but immediately implement advisory groups. Immediately go out and create a power structure that is more inclusive, so that you've got a pool of candidates and thought leadership that you can learn from. So, we can immediately do that. The second thing that we could do is immediately say we need people at the table. Yeah. So to me, I hear the different comments about you want the best person, and I've heard this for years when it comes to the Women's Initiative, is you want the best person, not just gender or race or, sexual orientation. And I agree with that, but I also feel that it's mandatory that we have a diversity at the table. So do everything you can to be looking for candidates, to be looking for groups, to be looking for, being inclusive. And, one Black colleague of mine mentioned, and now I'm being called upon to be on boards and to do all this stuff. And I feel like it's kind of a token situation. And my response was, shine your light. Doggone it. It's okay if it's quote unquote perceived to be tokenism, because you can refer other people. You bring other people to the table that becomes more inclusive. And so sometimes I think we step away because we don't want to, to feel like it's this or it's that, or there's this emotional baggage that we need to get rid of. And when you talk about the power shift, those things have to be, instead of us saying, oh, no, I don't want you to feel like you're token, I want to step into it and say, yeah, you're my vehicle. Tell me, give me more people, right? Yeah. So, you could tell I get on my soapbox a little bit.
But it goes back to vulnerability and humility, right? For those in power to say, this isn't jeopardizing my ability to have power. This is helping to spread that power in bigger and better ways. It's not taking away something.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah. I love this.
Me too.
And I love the fact that we had this quiet time with each other. So,
minus the cicadas. Again, I apologize. You leave your window open to get some fresh air, and here we are though in the Zoom environment, right?
Okay.
That sounds great.
Thanks
so much, Sue.
Take care of you.